Elliot's hands trembled as he stood in the living room, the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing against his chest. "I'm gay," he said, his voice cracking like thin ice underfoot. The silence that followed was louder than any storm. And for a moment, he feared the world he'd built would collapse right there in his childhood home. But then his mother, Maggie, rose from the couch, her eyes glistening with tears. She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled him into a hug, so tight it felt like she was anchoring him to the earth. "I'm so proud of you, Elliot," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. His father, Tom, nodded from the armchair, his usual stoicism softened by a rare, tender smile. "You're still our son," he said simply, and Elliot felt the weight lift, if only for a moment. His sister, Claire, clapped him on the shoulder, grinning. "Took you long enough, big brother." The room felt alive with acceptance, a warmth Elliot hadn't known he'd been craving his entire life. He was 32, a high school history teacher in the small town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, where everyone knew your name and your business. Coming out had been a gamble, a leap into the unknown after years of hiding behind a marriage to Sarah, his high school sweetheart. Their divorce 2 years ago had been amicable, or so he thought, shared custody of their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, and a mutual agreement to keep things civil. But standing in that living room, surrounded by his family's embrace, Elliot felt invincible. He'd done it. He'd told his truth. For the first time, he could breathe. The next morning, Elliot woke to the smell of coffee and his mother's pancakes, a Sunday ritual from his childhood. The kitchen was bright, sunlight streaming through the curtains, and Maggie hummed softly as she flipped a pancake. "You look lighter today," she said, sliding a plate toward him. "Like you've shed a skin." Elliot smiled, sipping his coffee, feeling the truth of her words. He'd spent years crafting a version of himself that fit Willow Creek's expectations: husband, father, dependable teacher. Now, he could finally be Elliot, unfiltered. But something flickered in Maggie's eyes as she sat across from him, a hesitation that made his stomach twist. "What is it, Mom?" he asked, setting his mug down. She waved a hand, brushing it off. "Nothing. Just thinking about how fast time goes." Her smile was too quick, too tight, and Elliot felt a prickle of unease. He pushed it aside. This was his moment of freedom, and he wouldn't let doubt creep in. Over the next few weeks, Elliot leaned into his new life. He joined a local LGBTQ support group in nearby Harrisburg, where he met Jamie, a 34-year-old artist with a quick laugh and eyes that seemed to see right through him. Their first coffee date stretched into hours, words tumbling out like they'd known each other forever. Jamie's confidence, his ease with himself, was magnetic. "You're just starting to figure out who you are," Jamie said, leaning across the table, his fingers brushing Elliot's. "It's scary, but it's beautiful." Elliot felt a spark, a possibility he'd never dared imagine. Back in Willow Creek, word of Elliot's coming out spread like wildfire. At school, colleagues offered quiet nods of support, though some parents whispered in the parking lot, their eyes darting away when he passed. Lily, blissfully unaware of the town's gossip, still ran to him at pickup, her pigtails bouncing as she chattered about her day. Sarah, too, seemed to take it in stride, her texts about Lily's schedule as polite as ever. "I'm glad you're being honest," she'd said when he told her, her voice neutral but not unkind. Elliot clung to that civility, hoping it meant they could co-parent without drama. But small towns have long memories and sharp tongues. One evening, as Elliot walked Lily to the park, he caught snippets of conversation from a group of mothers nearby. "Heard he's got a boyfriend already," one said, her tone dripping with judgment. Poor Sarah, left to pick up the pieces. Elliot's grip tightened on Lily's hand. But he kept walking. His jaw set. He wouldn't let their words dim his light. At home, his family remained his rock. Maggie baked him cookies. Tom asked about his day, and Claire teased him about his new glow. They were his safe haven, the ones who'd seen him at his most vulnerable and loved him anyway. Or so he believed. One crisp October evening, Elliot's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "We need to talk. Now." Her tone was sharp, unlike her usual measured messages. He drove to her apartment, a knot forming in his gut. When she opened the door, her face was a storm-eyes red, lips pressed into a thin line. "How could you?" She spat, her voice trembling with rage. Elliot froze. "What are you talking about?" She thrust a stack of papers at him, printouts of his journal entries. Private thoughts he'd poured out after coming out. His fears about being a gay father in a small town. His guilt over their failed marriage. His budding feelings for Jamie. Every word was a piece of his soul, never meant for her eyes. "Your family sold me these," she said, her voice breaking. $7,000. Elliot, that's what your secrets were worth to them. The world tilted. His family, the ones who'd hugged him, praised him, promised him love. They'd taken his trust, his truth, and sold it for a price. Elliot's knees buckled, and he sank onto her couch, the papers crumpling in his hands. How had it come to this? Elliot stared at the papers, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack his ribs. The journal entries were unmistakable, his handwriting, his rawest thoughts, laid bare like a wound. Sarah stood over him, her anger giving way to something softer, almost pitying. "I didn't want to believe it," she said, her voice quieter now. "But your mom, she came to me last week. Said she needed the money for Tom's medical bills. Said you'd never know." Elliot's mind reeled. His father had been diagnosed with early-stage heart disease a year ago, but he'd seemed fine, gruff, steady. The same old Tom. Was it a lie? A justification? He looked up at Sarah, searching her face for answers. Why would they do this? He whispered, more to himself than to her. Sarah sat across from him, her hands twisting in her lap. "I don't know, Elliot. I didn't want this any of it. But when Maggie showed me those pages, I couldn't stop reading. I was hurt. Angry. You wrote things about me. About us. That I never knew." Her voice cracked, and she looked away. "I paid her because I thought it would help me understand. But now I just feel sick." Elliot's throat burned. He'd written about his guilt, his fear that he'd trapped Sarah in a marriage built on a half-truth. He'd loved her, in his way, but never fully, never the way she deserved. Those pages were his attempt to make sense of it all, not a weapon to hurt her. "I'm sorry," he said, the words hollow against the betrayal he felt. "I never meant for you to see those." Sarah shook her head. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about Lily. What if this gets out? What if the town uses this against you? Against her?" Her eyes locked onto his, fierce with protectiveness. "You need to fix this, Elliot, before it destroys everything." He drove home in a daze, the papers stuffed into his jacket like contraband. The autumn leaves swirled across the road, their colors muted under the streetlights. His family's house loomed ahead, its familiar porch light glowing like a beacon. But it no longer felt like home. It felt like a trap. Inside, Maggie was washing dishes, her back to him. Tom sat at the kitchen table, reading the paper, while Claire scrolled on her phone. The normalcy of it all made Elliot's stomach churn. He dropped the papers onto the table with a thud, and 3 pairs of eyes snapped to him. "Explain," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Maggie's hands stilled in the sink. But she didn't turn. Tom lowered his paper, his face unreadable. Claire's phone clattered to the table. Elliot. What she started. But he cut her off. Don't. I know what you did. $7,000. Mom. For my journal. His voice rose, shaking with fury. You hugged me. Told me you were proud. And then you sold my soul to Sarah. Maggie turned slowly, her face pale. Elliot. We didn't mean. Didn't mean what? He snapped. To betray me. To lie to my face. He turned to Tom. Did you know? Were you in on this too? Tom's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Claire reached for Elliot's arm, her eyes wide. It wasn't like that. Mom was desperate. Dad's treatments. The insurance isn't enough. She thought. Thought what? Elliot's voice broke. That I wouldn't notice. That I'd just keep smiling while you ripped my life apart. He looked at Maggie, the woman who'd raised him, who'd taught him to be brave. You were supposed to protect me. Tears spilled down Maggie's cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought I was protecting all of us. The hospital bills. We were drowning. Elliot. I didn't know what else to do. He wanted to scream, to shatter the room with his hurt. But all he could do was stand there, the weight of their betrayal crushing him. He grabbed the papers and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The next few days were a blur. Elliot avoided his family, staying late at school to grade papers, his mind replaying Maggie's words. Desperate or not, how could she justify it? He confided in Jamie over coffee, his voice raw as he recounted the betrayal. Jamie listened, his hand resting gently on Elliot's. You don't have to forgive them, he said. Not yet. But you need to decide what you're fighting for. Is it Lily? Yourself? Or something bigger? Elliot didn't have an answer. He felt untethered, like a boat cut loose in a storm. At school, the whispers grew louder. A parent confronted him during a conference, demanding to know if he was fit to teach their kids. The principal, a kind but cautious woman, called him into her office. We're getting complaints, she said gently. Nothing formal yet. But be careful, Elliot. That night, he sat with Lily, helping her color a picture of a rainbow. Her small hand gripped the crayon, her tongue poking out in concentration. Daddy, why are you sad? She asked, her blue eyes piercing. He forced a smile. Just grown-up stuff. Kiddo. I'm okay. But he wasn't. The journal entries were a ticking time bomb, and Sarah held the detonator. If she shared them, his job, his reputation, his life in Willow Creek could crumble. He needed to confront her again, to understand her intentions. But more than that, he needed to face his family and decide if their love was worth salvaging or if some betrayals cut too deep to heal. Elliot pulled into Sarah's driveway, his heart a tangled knot of dread and determination. The journal entries sat on the passenger seat, a silent accusation. He hadn't slept properly in days, his mind caught in a loop of his family's betrayal and the looming threat of exposure. Willow Creek was a small town, and secrets like his didn't stay buried long. Sarah answered the door in sweatpants, her hair pulled back, her face weary. You didn't call, she said, stepping aside to let him in. The apartment smelled of lavender candles, a familiar scent from their marriage that stung more than he expected. I needed to see you, Elliot said, holding up the papers. We need to talk about what you're going to do with these. Sarah sighed, sinking onto the couch. I'm not going to do anything. Elliot. Not yet. But I'm angry. Okay. You wrote things about how you felt trapped. How you never loved me the way I thought. It hurts. Her voice wavered. and she looked down at her hands. I bought them because I wanted answers. But now I don't know what to do with them. Elliot sat across from her, the distance between them feeling like miles. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. Those entries, they were me trying to understand myself. I loved you, Sarah, but not the way you deserved. I'm sorry for that. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I know, and I'm trying to be okay with it. But this town, they're already talking. If these get out, it's not just you they'll come for. It's Lily. You know how cruel people can be. The mention of their daughter hit like a punch. Elliot leaned forward, his voice urgent. Then don't let them get out. Burn them. Sarah. Please. For Lily's sake. Sarah hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the couch. I want to. But I need to know you're not going to shut me out. We're still a team. Right. For her. Elliot nodded, though his trust in anyone felt fragile. Always. He left with no clear answers. Only a fragile truce. Driving home, he felt the weight of Jamie's words from their last conversation. What are you fighting for? He wanted to protect Lily, to keep teaching, to build a life where he could be himself. But his family's betrayal had fractured that dream, and he didn't know how to piece it back together. The next day, he went to the school's LGBTQ support club, where he volunteered as a faculty advisor. The kids' brave, outspoken teens who reminded him of Jamie's confidence gave him a spark of hope. One student, a 16-year-old named Mia, shared her own story of coming out to mixed reactions. Some people get it, she said, shrugging. Others don't. You just keep going. Elliot envied her resilience, her ability to shrug off judgment. He wanted that strength. But trouble was brewing. At a school board meeting that evening, a group of parents raised concerns about inappropriate influences in the classroom. They didn't name Elliot directly, but their pointed glances made their target clear. He sat in the back, his hands clenched, as the principal defended the school's inclusive policies. We support all our teachers, she said firmly, but Elliot saw the strain in her eyes. She was fighting a losing battle against a town rooted in tradition. When he got home, Maggie was waiting on the porch, her coat pulled tight against the October chill. Elliot, please, she said as he brushed past her. Talk to me. He stopped, his back to her, his anger a living thing. Why? So you can sell that conversation too. She flinched, but her voice was steady. I was wrong. I know that. But we're family. We can fix this. He turned, his eyes blazing. Fix it. You sold my private thoughts. Mom, you let Sarah see parts of me I wasn't ready to share. How do I trust you again? Maggie's face crumpled, but she didn't back down. I was scared. Elliot, your dad's heart. The bills were piling up. I thought I could keep it quiet, that Sarah wouldn't use it against you. I was wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Her words stirred something in him, grief. Maybe, or the ghost of the love they'd once shared. But he couldn't let it in. Not yet. I need time, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He walked inside, leaving her on the porch, the cold air swallowing her silhouette. That night, Jamie called, sensing Elliot's turmoil through the phone. Come to Harrisburg, he said. Get away for a bit. You don't have to face this alone. Elliot hesitated, torn between the safety of Jamie's world and the chaos of his own. But the thought of seeing Jamie, of feeling seen, was a lifeline he couldn't ignore. The next weekend, he drove to Harrisburg, Lily in tow for a visit with her cousins. Jamie met them at a park, his smile bright enough to cut through Elliot's fog. They walked along the Susquehanna River, Lily skipping ahead, chasing leaves. You're stronger than you think, Jamie said, his hand finding Elliot's. This town, your family, they don't get to define you. Elliot wanted to believe him, but as they sat on a bench, watching Lily play, his phone buzzed with a new text from Sarah. We need to talk again. It's about the school board. His heart sank. Whatever was coming, it wasn't good. Elliot's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he drove back to Willow Creek. Sarah's text burning in his mind. The school board. The words carried a weight that made his chest ache. He glanced at Lily in the back seat, singing softly to herself, oblivious to the storm brewing. He envied her innocence, her ability to live in a world where love wasn't a battlefield. When he arrived at Sarah's apartment, she was pacing, her phone clutched tightly. They're pushing for a review, she said without preamble. The school board. Some parents got wind of your journal entries. They're saying you're unstable and a risk to the kids. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes were wide with worry. I didn't give them the pages, Elliot. I swear. But someone's talking. Elliot's blood ran cold. Who else did my mom sell them to? He asked, his voice barely controlled. Sarah shook her head. I don't know. I told her to destroy any other copies. But, she trailed off, her expression grim. This town loves a scandal. And you're the perfect target. He sank onto her couch, his mind racing. The journal entries were personal, raw admissions of doubt, fear, and love that could be twisted into something ugly in the wrong hands. If the school board got them, his job was at risk. His ability to provide for Lily, to be the father she needed, hung in the balance. I'll talk to the board, he said finally. I'll tell them the truth. I have nothing to hide. Sarah's eyes softened. You don't have to hide, but you need to be smart. These people aren't looking for truthy, looking for someone to blame. He left her apartment with a plan forming, fragile but resolute. He'd face the board, defend his right to teach, to live as himself. But first, he needed answers from his family. If Maggie had sold the entries to anyone else, he had to know. At home, he found Claire in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up, her face brightening, then faltering at his expression. Elle, what's wrong? Did you know? He asked, his voice low. About Mom selling my journal. Did you help her? Claire's knife stilled, her eyes widening. No. God. No. I knew she was stressed about money, but I didn't know she'd go that far. She set the knife down, her hands trembling. I swear. Elliot. I would have stopped her. He wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing now. Then why didn't you tell me she was desperate? Why let it get to this? Claire's face crumpled. I thought she had it under control. I didn't want to worry you. You were finally happy. Her voice broke, and she reached for him, but he stepped back. I need to talk to Mom, he said, turning away. Maggie was in the living room, knitting, her hands moving mechanically. She looked up as he entered, her face pale. Elliot. Who else? He demanded. Who else did you give my journal to? Her hands froze, the knitting needles clattering to the floor. No one, she whispered. Just Sarah. I swear. Then how does the school board know? His voice rose, echoing in the quiet room. Someone spreading my private thoughts. Mom. My job. My life, it's all at risk. Do you get that? Maggie's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought Sarah would keep it private. I was trying to save us. Save us? Elliot laughed bitterly. You sold me out. For what? A few bills paid. You think that's worth my trust? Tom appeared in the doorway, his face drawn. That's enough. Elliot, he said, his voice gruff but unsteady. Your mother made a mistake. We're trying to fix it. How? Elliot shot back. By lying to me again. By pretending you're still my family. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Maggie sobbed, and Tom's face hardened. But he didn't speak. Elliot grabbed his coat and left, the door slamming behind him. He drove aimlessly, the town's familiar streets blurring past. He ended up at the park, sitting on a bench under a bare oak tree, the cold seeping through his jacket. His phone buzzed. Jamie. You okay? His voice came through, warm and steady. No, Elliot admitted, his throat tight. Everything's falling apart. Come to Harrisburg, Jamie said. Bring Lily. Stay with me for a few days. You need a break from that place. Elliot hesitated, but the thought of Jamie's apartment, filled with art and warmth, was a lifeline. Okay, he said. Tomorrow. The next day, he packed a bag for himself and Lily and drove to Harrisburg. Jamie greeted them at the door, his smile soft but unwavering. Lily ran inside, enchanted by the colorful paintings on the walls. Jamie pulled Elliot into a hug, and for the first time in days, Elliot felt like he could breathe. They spent the evening cooking dinner, Lily giggling as she helped Jamie stir the sauce. Over wine, Elliot told him everything: the journal, the school board, his family's betrayal. Jamie listened, his hand resting on Elliot's knee. You're not alone in this, he said. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. For a moment, Elliot believed him. But as he tucked Lily into bed, his phone buzzed with an email from the principal. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Your presence is required. The fight was coming, whether he was ready or not. The school board meeting loomed like a guillotine. Elliot sat in Jamie's apartment, staring at the email, his coffee growing cold. Lily was sprawled on the floor, coloring with markers Jamie had given her, humming a tune from school. Jamie sat beside him, his presence a quiet anchor. You've got this, he said, squeezing Elliot's hand. Just tell them who you are. They can't take that away. Elliot nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. Willow Creek wasn't known for open minds. He'd seen how quickly neighbors turn on each other over lesser scandals. His journal entries private, raw, and now weaponized called paint him as unfit, unstable, a danger to the kids he loved teaching. He drove back to Willow Creek that afternoon, Lily in the back seat, her chatter a welcome distraction. At home, he found a note from Maggie slipped under his door. I'm sorry. Please let me explain. Dinner tonight. He crumpled it, his anger flaring anew. She didn't get to set the terms of forgiveness. The board meeting was held in the school auditorium, a stark room filled with folding chairs and tense faces. Parents packed the seats, their whispers buzzing like static. Elliot sat in the front row, his hands clasped to hide their trembling. The principal, Ms. Carter, opened the meeting, her voice calm but strained. We're here to address concerns about Mr. Elliot Hayes' conduct as a teacher. A parent stood, a woman Elliot recognized from church, her face tight with indignation. We've heard disturbing things, she said, holding up a photocopied page that made Elliot's stomach lurch. Personal writings that question his stability. Is this the kind of person we want teaching our children? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elliot's heart pounded, but he stood, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. Those writings are private, he said. They were stolen from me, taken out of context. I'm a teacher, a father, and a man who's finally living honestly. That doesn't make me unfitted makes me human. MS. Carter nodded. But the board president, a stern man named Mr. Grayson, leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, we understand your personal life has changed, but these writings suggest emotional instability. Can you assure us you're capable of maintaining professionalism? Elliot met his gaze, his voice firm. I've taught here for 8 years. My students' grades, their engagement, those speak for themselves. My personal life doesn't change my commitment to them. A few parents clapped, but others muttered, their disapproval palpable. Sarah, sitting in the back, caught his eye, her expression unreadable. Had she leaked the pages? Or was someone else pulling the strings? The meeting ended with no decision, only a promise to review further. Elliot left feeling like he'd dodged a bullet, but was still in the crosshairs. He drove to Jamie's, needing his clarity, his strength. Over dinner, Jamie listened as Elliot vented, his frustration spilling out. They're judging me for who I am, not what I do, he said, his voice breaking. How do I fight that? Jamie leaned across the table, his eyes fierce. You fight by showing up, by being the best damn teacher, father, and person you can be. They can't take that away unless you let them. Elliot clung to those words as he returned to Willow Creek the next day. At school, he threw himself into his lessons, teaching with a passion that silenced the whispers, at least for a moment. His students, oblivious to the drama, responded with enthusiasm, their hands shooting up to answer questions about the Civil War. But the tension lingered, a shadow he couldn't shake. That evening, Maggie showed up at his apartment, her face drawn. Elliot, please, she said, her voice trembling. I need you to hear me. He let her in, more out of exhaustion than forgiveness. She sat on his couch, her hands wringing a tissue. I didn't sell to anyone else, she said. But I showed the pages to Mrs. Larson at church. I thought she'd understand, that she'd help us with the bills. She must have copied them. Elliot's jaw tightened. Mrs. Larson, the woman from the meeting. Of course. You trusted her with my life, Mom. And now it's out there. I know, Maggie whispered, tears streaming down her face. I was selfish, scared. I thought I was saving us, but I broke us instead. Her words hit hard, stirring the love he still felt beneath the hurt. But he couldn't forgive her. Not yet. I need space, he said, his voice flat. Please go. She left, and Elliot sat alone, the silence heavy. His phone buzzed a text from Sarah. I found out who leaked it. Meet me tomorrow. We'll fix this. Hope flickered, but so did fear. What would fixing this cost him? Elliot met Sarah at the diner the next morning, the same one where he'd once taken Lily for milkshakes. The retro jukebox hummed in the corner, a stark contrast to the tension between them. Sarah slid into the booth, her face pale but determined. It was Mrs. Larson, she said, confirming Maggie's confession. She's been passing copies of your journal around the church group. Claims she's protecting the community. Elliot's hands clenched around his coffee mug. Protecting them from what? Me being honest. His voice was bitter, but underneath it was a bone-deep weariness. He'd spent weeks fighting to hold on to his life, and now it felt like the town was closing in. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low. I confronted her last night. She admitted to sharing the pages with the school board. I told her if she spreads them further, I'll expose her for stealing private property. She backed off, but the damage is done. Elliot exhaled, the weight of her words settling over him. So what now? The board's still reviewing me. If they fire me, I lose everything, me job, my home, maybe even Lily. Sarah's eyes softened. I won't let that happen. I've got a lawyer friend who can help. We'll fight this. Elliot. For Lily. Her words were a lifeline, but they also stung. She was fighting for their daughter, not for him. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Thank you. They parted with a plan. Sarah's lawyer would draft a letter to the school board, citing the illegal distribution of private documents and demanding a fair review. But Elliot knew it was only a bandage on a deeper wound. The town's judgment, his family's betrayal, the fear of losing Liliet was all too much. He drove to Jamie's that evening, needing his steadiness. Jamie greeted him with a hug, his arms a safe harbor. Over takeout, Elliot poured out his fears, his voice raw. I thought coming out would free me, he said, but it's like I'm fighting the whole world now. Jamie's eyes held his, unwavering. You're not fighting alone. I'm here. Lily's here. You've got people who see you. Elliot, really see you. Those words carried him through the next few days. At school, he kept his head high, teaching with a fire that surprised even him. His students noticed, one even slipping him a note, "You're my favorite teacher." Don't let them win. It was small, but it fueled him. But the storm wasn't over. At a parent-teacher night, a group of parents cornered him, their voices low but venomous. "We don't want our kids exposed to your lifestyle," one said, her eyes cold. Elliot stood tall, his voice calm but firm. "I teach history, not my personal life. Your kids are learning, and they're safe. That's what matters." Some parents nodded. Others walked away. But the encounter left him shaken. He called Maggie that night, his anger giving way to a need for answers. "Why didn't you stop, Mrs. Larson?" he asked. "Why let it spread?" Maggie's voice was small through the phone. "I was ashamed. Elliot. I thought if I told her the truth, she'd help us. Instead, she used it against you. I'm so sorry." He hung up, her apology echoing in his mind. He wanted to forgive her, to rebuild what they'd lost. But the hurt was too raw. Instead, he focused on Lily, taking her to the park, reading her bedtime stories, holding on to the one thing that kept him grounded. The school board's decision came a week later. Ms. Carter called him into her office, her face unreadable. "They're keeping you on," she said. "The lawyer's letter helped, and some parents spoke up for you. But it's probationary. One misstep, and they'll revisit." Relief flooded him, but it was tempered by caution. Probation wasn't freedom, it was a leash. He thanked her and left, driving to Jamie's to share the news. Jamie pulled him into a kiss, fierce and joyful. "You did it," he said. "You're still standing." But Elliot knew the fight wasn't over. The town was watching, waiting for him to falter. And his family, Claire, Tom, Maggie remained a wound he didn't know how to heal. As he drove home with Lily asleep in the back, he made a silent vow he'd keep fighting. For her, for himself, for the life he was building from the ashes of betrayal. Elliot stood in front of his classroom, chalk dust on his fingers, as his students debated the impact of the Stonewall riots. Their voices were alive, passionate, and for a moment, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. But the probationary status hung over him like a storm cloud, a reminder that his place in Willow Creek was fragile. After class, Mia, the student from the LGBTQ club, lingered by his desk. "I heard about the board meeting," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. "You didn't give up. That means a lot to us." She gestured to herself, to the invisible community of kids like her. Elliot's throat tightened. "Thanks, Mia." he said. You keep me going too. Her words stayed with him as he drove to pick up Lily from Sarah's. Sarah greeted him at the door, her face softer than it had been in weeks. The lawyer's working on a defamation case against Mrs. Larson, she said. It won't undo everything, but it might stop the rumors. Elliot nodded, grateful but wary. You didn't have to do this. Sarah, why are you helping me? She looked at him, her eyes steady. Because you're Lily's dad. And because I know you're a good person, even if I'm still hurt. She paused, then added, I burned the journal pages. Elliot, they're gone. The weight of her words hit him hard. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully, but it was a step toward something better. That evening, he took Lily to Jamie's, where they carved pumpkins for Halloween. Lily's laughter filled the room as Jamie helped her scoop out the seeds, his own grin infectious. Watching them, Elliot felt a warmth he hadn't known in months. This was what he was fighting for, a life where Lily could grow up surrounded by love. Not judgment. But his family remained a shadow. Claire called, leaving voicemails he didn't answer. Tom sent a text, we miss you. Let's talk. Maggie showed up at his apartment one morning, her face etched with guilt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I just want you to know I'm trying to make it right. I told the church group I was wrong. I'm meeting with MS Carter tomorrow to support you. Elliot studied her, searching for the mother he'd once trusted completely. Why now? He asked. Because I love you, she said simply. And I hate what I've done to you. He didn't hug her, didn't say it was okay. But he nodded, a small crack in the wall between them. I'll think about it, he said. And she left, her shoulders slumped but hopeful. The next week, the school board held another meeting, this time with Maggie in attendance. She stood before them, her voice trembling but clear. My son is the best teacher you have, she said. What I did was wrong, and I'll carry that shame forever. But don't punish him for my mistake. Her words, raw and honest, shifted something in the room. A few parents nodded, and MS Carter's eyes shone with quiet pride. The board voted to lift Elliot's probation, citing his exemplary record and community support. It wasn't a full victory, the whispers would linger, but it was enough for now. Elliot celebrated with Jamie and Lily at the diner, their laughter a balm to his wounds. But as he tucked Lily into bed that night, he knew the hardest part was still ahead, rebuilding with his family. He called Claire, his voice steady. I'm ready to talk, he said, but it's going to take time. She cried through the phone, her relief palpable. We'll wait. As long as it takes. The next day, he met Maggie and Tom for coffee. It was awkward, the air thick with unspoken hurt. But Maggie reached for his hand. And this time, he didn't pull away. We'll earn your trust back, she said. Tom nodded, his eyes wet. You're our son. Always will be. Elliot didn't forgive them. Not fully. But he felt the first stirrings of hope. A belief that maybe, with time, they could find their way back to each other. As he drove home, Lily asleep in the back, he thought of Jamie's words, you're not alone. For the first time, he believed it. Winter settled over Willow Creek, blanketing the town in snow and a quiet that felt like a fresh start. Elliot stood in his classroom, packing up after the last day before the holiday break. His students had left him a card, signed with messages of gratitude that made his chest ache with pride. He'd fought for this his place, his purpose, and he'd won. At least for now. At home, Lily helped him decorate their small Christmas tree, her excitement contagious as she hung glittery ornaments. Jamie joined them, bringing hot cocoa and a warmth that made the apartment feel like a home. They'd grown closer over the weeks, their relationship a steady anchor in the chaos. Jamie didn't push, didn't demand more than Elliot could give. And that patience was a gift Elliot hadn't known he needed. Sarah, too, had become an unexpected ally. The defamation case against Mrs. Larson moved forward, quieting the rumors as the town's attention shifted to other gossip. Sarah and Elliot met weekly to discuss Lily, their conversations cautious but kind. "I'm proud of you," she said one day, her smile genuine. "You're showing Lily what it means to be brave." Her words stayed with him as he navigated his family's slow, painful rebuilding. Maggie and Tom invited him for Christmas dinner, and after weeks of hesitation, he agreed. Claire was there, her usual teasing softened by a new respect. The meal was quiet at first, the weight of their history heavy. But as Lily chattered about school, the tension eased. Maggie reached for Elliot's hand, her eyes pleading. "We're trying," she said. "Is that enough for now?" Elliot looked at her, at Tom's hopeful face, at Claire's nervous smile. "It's a start," he said, and meant it. Forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, and he was willing to take the first step. The new year brought clarity. Elliot continued teaching, his passion undimmed by the town's lingering whispers. He volunteered more at the LGBTQ club, mentoring kids like Mia, who were finding their own courage. Jamie moved closer to Willow Creek, their relationship deepening into something Elliot hadn't dared dream of, a love that felt like home. One spring evening, Elliot took Lily to the park, the same one where he'd once overheard the mother's cruel words. This time, they were joined by Jamie, Maggie, Tom, and Claire. Lily ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, her laughter ringing out. Maggie watched her, then turned to Elliot. "You're an incredible father," she said, her voice thick. "I'm so sorry I almost took that from you." Elliot met her gaze, the hurt still there, but softer now. "I know, Mom. We'll get there." He reached for Jamie's hand, and Jamie squeezed back, his smile a promise. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Elliot felt a peace he hadn't known in years. His family's betrayal had nearly broken him, but it had also shown him his own strength. He'd faced the town, the board, his own fears, and come out stronger. Lily's hand slipped into his, and he looked down at her, his heart full. "Daddy, look," she said, pointing to the butterfly landing on a flower. "It's free." Elliot smiled, his eyes stinging. "Yeah, kiddo," he said. "So are we." The journey wasn't over. There would be more fights, more whispers, more steps to mend what was broken. But for the first time, Elliot knew he could face them. He had Lily, Jamie, and a truth that no one could take away. His family had praised him for coming out, then sold his secrets for $7,000. But in the end, it was his courage, his love, that defined him, not their betrayal. And that was worth everything.